Usually when you think of top tier Apex players like Imperial Hal, Sir Del, Jen Burton, you generally think of good aim. But having good aim is just a small percentage of being good at a shooter like Apex. You need to constantly be setting yourself and putting yourself into positions in order to be landing those shots and showing off that good aim. It's kinda like baking. You can't just magically make a cake, you have to add all the ingredients. So hello everyone, I'm your hostess with the mostest, 8 Second Gaming, and in today's video I'm going to be breaking down some issues low elo players have that's holding them back from climbing and give you some of these ingredients. And if you want to have even more of these ingredients, you need to check out the GameLeap website right now. Over there you'll find highly in-depth courses that go over very specific areas of Apex in order to help you make your cake. And there's no better time than right now because we have a sale going on. So click the link in the description, pick yourself up an annual subscription and use code GETGOOD for 50% off that. I can't wait to see you guys over there. Now let's get into the juicy topics here and let's start off with a fun one. Mistake number 1 holding people back is they don't create enough pressure in fights. This is normally a mistake players make when they aren't the ones who started the fight, but it's also something I've seen players who initiate fights struggle with. So what exactly does it mean to be creating pressure in fights? Well, let's break that down. The problem with not creating pressure is allowing your enemies to start taking positive uncontested space in said fights. This makes it very easy for them to start taking new angles or singling out certain legends. And some legends can deal with that a lot better than others. If a lifeline gets singled out, she's basically dead, she has no movement ability. In a fast-paced fight, you can't be letting people take this space for free. You have to be applying pressure by shooting back, pinning them down, or just other things like that. If you are defending from an attack, then you can't let anyone start pushing you around. As soon as you've done that, the fight is basically moved from a straight up 3v3 to potentially a 2v3 or worst case scenario, a 1v3. Because you've been caught out and allowed the enemy to just run up on you. How many times have you been watching your favorite pro player and they just let someone run at them without attempting to shoot back? I'm gonna say almost never. And I'm sure at least some of you have been in a fight where it feels like there's 40 people shooting at you with how many new spots your enemy is able to play. This is because you aren't applying pressure to them, so they can shoot, deal damage, reposition, shoot, deal damage, and keep repeating that until they're either on top of you or the fight's over because you got one clip from someone in a new spot. And if you've tried this and you can't seem to get any pressure, you need to remember that your enemy is also responding to everything you do. If you run, jump, slide, reposition, anything like that, they'll know, and if they can ping or call it out, their team will also know. They will then probably reposition themselves to counter your attacks. So it's very hard to apply pressure as a solo. Apex is a team game. Play around your team. Move to a spot, pressure a bit, and then force the other team to respond to you. When you do that, you allow your teammates to reposition uncontested, and then they can start applying their own pressure, which in turn allows you to move, play a new spot, and repeat the process. If you are never moving to new positions in fights to take new angles, force people out of their spots, or more, you're probably going to lose that fight. If you don't play around your team, the enemy only has one thing to react to also, and they can easily single you out, kill you, and the fight is over in the blink of an eye. And do keep in mind, if a team is really trying to pressure something, then they probably are weak in certain areas. If they are really trying to push a building, they may be out in the open. If they're tunneling on one player, their sides are probably open to attack. You need to always be looking for these weak areas in order to exploit them and create counter pressure to turn the fight in your favor. And guys, also please do not be afraid to use nades or your legend's ability to create pressure. Gibby ult someone, Ash portal to a new spot, Valk jetpack to take high ground. You have abilities for a reason, use them in fights. They aren't just there for aesthetic reasons. Now moving on, let's talk about mistake number 2, and that's you sit in the same place for way too long. And this one is again more of a team-wide mistake. I see it all the time in low elo players. A lot of them will just get stuck in certain areas and sit and loot them for way too long. A lot of the times these are mainly choke points that people get caught in, but sometimes it can happen in random POIs that are spread throughout the map. And there can be a few reasons that this happens. One reason is you may not know where to go. Some people just don't know how to see where ring will be pulling, and that causes them to freeze and just stay in the same place. Another reason is you aren't paying attention. People doze off in games and just kind of enter an autopilot mode where nothing really matters and they're just going with the flow. But if your team is doing the same thing, you will accomplish nothing and go nowhere because you're playing off of them in autopilot mode and they're playing off of you in autopilot mode. You crash into each other, nothing gets done. Or it could be that you're a hoover, literally vacuuming up every tiny piece of loot that you can find because you're not sure if you need 34 syringes or not. Trust me, you don't, you only really need 4. If this is you, you gotta stop. If you're playing Apex and especially in ranked, you can't really be lollygagging through high traffic areas, or even just not paying attention when rotating. If you're not paying attention, a team could easily roll up on you and get a kill on someone from your squad that's alone. Because you've spent 15 minutes in the same area, you've just allowed a team to move to you, and hand in hand with creating pressure, you haven't applied any to the map so no one really knows that you're there. If you're going to be staying in the same place for extended periods of time, say a building that you want to hold for endgame, you need to start applying pressure from the first tip. Have something like a marksman rifle and be taking shots at people from afar. Something like this that lets everyone know where you are and that you plan on staying there, so be warned. You always have to be aware of how long you're in one area for, and if you're there for more than say a minute, then start being conscious of how other teams on the map will be moving towards you. Now next up, mistake number 3, and that's using your abilities when you're exposed. Look, this straight up is don't peek anyone when you're using an ability. The abilities in Apex have animations, and certain ones like Bloodhound, Wraith, or Rampart put your gun away completely, and that can leave you caught out and open. If you get caught out with your pants down, this can make you die very quickly in fights and not be useful to your team at all. Because of this, you need to start limiting the amount of time you are vulnerable to the enemy when using utility. Like I said, Wraith and Bloodhound are usually legends that players get affected by this. Bloodhound's scan has animations and Wraith does her little hand thing before entering phase, so you gotta be aware of that. Hound scans go through walls. There's literally no reason you should be scanning someone out in the open if you don't absolutely have to. And I see a lot of Wraith players be upset with how long the Q time takes to activate and the animation gets them killed. And to be fair, that's just poor positioning and leaving yourself too exposed, so you don't have any cover to protect you while you activate the ability. If your gun is not out, you are a defenseless target and that will probably result in your death. So my best advice is to take some time, go into the firing range and start seeing how long abilities take to activate. That way you're going to be able to start judging that in fights and be able to play around it and won't be caught out as much. And even though I may not have mentioned your personal main, I suggest that everyone does this no matter who you play. Learn the timings, and if you're playing a legend who can still shoot while using theirs, learn the distances that you can hipfire accurately. Though I do know that some utility like Gibraltar ult can kill players and you may need to throw it when being in the open. But that doesn't mean you can't be smart about it. Jiggle peek, time it with the enemies reloading, just small things like that can help you stay alive in fights and be better teammates because of it. Apex players are always making mistakes, so if you're low elo and make these, don't worry about it. At least you aren't like me and making these mistakes when fighting pro players in tournaments. And watching videos like this and other content on the GameLeap website, for example, is a huge step in fixing them and becoming unhardstuck. There are plenty of mistakes that low elo players make that I will be addressing in future videos, so if you want to stay up to date with those, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. Once again, I'm 8 Second Gaming, and I will see you in the next one.